Oh.
Good afternoon. Welcome to this board meeting of Ebbsfleet Development Corporation. Can I just let you know that we are recording this. It will be available on our website after the board meeting. Thank you for joining us. I'd like to get into today's business. Can we just start whether there are any apologies for absence, James?
No apologies. We are expecting Councillor Murphy to join shortly.
All right. And are there any declarations of interest other than the standard declarations of interest which relate to members of our planning committee? No, I'm going to take it that those are the only declarations of interest. Then we have our part one board minutes of our board meeting of the 25th of September. We've got a set of these in front of us, very thorough as always. Can I just check whether everyone's happy with those, whether there are any comments on these? In which case I will assume that those are accepted and approved by the members of the board. I'm then looking through is there any actions outstanding that you'd particularly like to draw our attention to?
Thanks, Simon. No, they're all closed, so all the outstanding actions. So, and got anything else to add to that?
All right, thank you very much, Ian. Then just before we get into today's business, I just wanted to quickly mention Richard Garvey, who is our boardroom apprentice, our second boardroom apprentice that we have had at Ebbsfleet Development Corporation. Richard, I think you've made a fantastic and well-informed contribution to the board of Ebbsfleet Development Corporation, and we all very much hope that you found it a rewarding experience. Now, perhaps if you'd just like to, say a couple of words, but it's been fantastic having you with us, and the Development Corporation will be having the 2025 boardroom apprentice as well, our third one. But Richard, it's been great to have you on board.
Thank you very much. It's been a really rewarding experience from my point of view. It was an organisation I was interested in before. So at my stage of my career, I'm quite used to presenting papers and so on, but to see things from the other side of the table and to see the work of the corporation at sort of close hand, it's been a real privilege for me, and it's been a really warm welcome as well. So I'd just like to say thank you, and I hope it goes as well for your next apprentice.
Well, look, Richard, thank you very much indeed. I know you've also been a strong advocate of the work of the Development Corporation, and we all wish you the very best as your career goes from strength to strength. So it's been wonderful having you with us. So thank you. That then takes us on to our first paper of the day. That is in the Chief Executive's Part 1 strategic report. Just wondering if you could take us through this, Ian.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I'm going to take largely as read with just a couple of verbal updates on 2.2 in terms of the spending process. We are still awaiting the confirmation from the Ministry of the allocations for the remainder of this year and next year, 25-26. We are led to believe that is expected probably before Christmas. That will be good. We've not received any further inquiries or challenges around the requests that we've made, so we remain hopeful for a positive settlement there. As soon as we do hear something between board meetings, I will let you know. And at 2.3, similarly, we have had no further information on the process that will be followed for the next stage of the spending review process. Still, in structural terms, expected to be the same as we've indicated previously. So again, we'll let you know as soon as we hear any more about that particular process. The previous government's previous announcements from the government were that allocations would be confirmed in the spring. So I understand that's still the intention. On the corporate plan, work is going on officers on this drafting sections, looking at particular issues that we highlighted before and spoke to the board about at strategy day in October. We are still on track to get a decent draft of the plan to the board on the 29th of January. So we're still on track for that. And the only final thing for me just to say is to again thank Richard for his contribution over the year. We've had regular sort of catch-ups after the meeting, which I think I said with our previous apprentice, it's useful for me. I think it is for the board member to reflect on how the meeting has gone, and that's been useful to get that sort of reflection back from Richard as well. So thank you. And I'd like to send you all our best wishes for the future from the team as well, Richard. Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, Ian, thank you very much. We also have the corporate performance update here as well. Is there anything you'd particularly like to draw our attention to in that, Ian?
Sorry, Tommy, I forgot about that. Apologies to all the people that have been sitting behind me that have come especially to the meeting for that and have put all the work into it. So, I mean, strong performance. We're at the half-year stage, reporting on the half-year stage. Housing completions well ahead of sort of where we should be at the half-year stage, based on quite a really strong performance in the last quarter. You'll notice from the report, the annex itself, that there's one red in terms of the milestones, and we'll give you an explanation of why that's not affected. So that's work that's progressing, but we're not on track to meet the ambition that we started at the beginning of the year for that. But and so yeah, I mean, you can see everything else is green, so really positive. And then say on the outputs themselves, there's one I think that is a couple that are looking difficult. We've reported there on KPI 5 that the delay due to the Henley building coming forward at Cable Wharf is like to mean that we won't achieve that KPI 500 square metres of community floor space. But again, overall, I think it's a strong performance, largely on track.
Thank you very much for that, Ian. I'd like to bring the board in for any comments they have on this performance report. I have a couple of comments. John, I can see that you've got your hand up.
Thank you. I'm interested particularly in the Annex A. If you go to page 12 on it, we're talking about our 100% performance on the public transport connections. Whilst that's obviously extremely good to achieve 100% performance within 5 minutes of a public transport network, the real question I've got is the reality of that. I'm probably within 5-6 minutes walk of a public transport link myself in Isodrise, but the bus stop you get on is about 15 minutes away, and the buses only come, you probably get 4 or 5 a day. The last one home out of Gray's End is before I get home from London on a train to go home. So it's absolutely useless for me. My question therefore is, whilst we're congratulating ourselves on 100% performance, what's the reality of getting on the bus? Because if the bus is 20 or 25 minutes walk, then it's not 5 minute 100% connection, is it? So I think we need to rethink how we're presenting that number as a 100% success rate, because if you can't get on the bus within a reasonable time, you won't get it, you won't bother. And are the buses regular? And we're only talking about the EDC, I get that, but it's still, there are still a lot of roads I can't believe are within 5 minutes walk of a bus stop. If we are, then it's amazing.
Thank you for that, John. Ian, who's in a position to answer that question?
Go. So, and Mark will come in. Mark and his team will be measuring that largely through the planning process. So, I think the first thing to say, John, it's a fair challenge. The 100% refers to the 152 new homes that have been registered as being completed. So it's not claiming everything, though historically we've tended to do pretty well on that target overall, but it is only referring to those 152. So I think your point about is it within a 5-minute walk of an actual bus stop? Mark might be able to comment on that. I don't know where we measure it from, or is it from a linear route? And of course, those could be two different things because they don't stop everywhere. The point about frequency, that's pretty difficult thing to encompass into a KPI, but because that's going to depend on transport authority, what they commission, etc. But what we have achieved certainly over the last 6 months is we've now got what was C2 route, but is now route E on the fast track. Started its services. That will continue to improve, and the frequency of that will increase over time as more of the actual infrastructure that will pass along increases. So I think it is an important metrics for us to measure. We are doing a general review of the KPIs at the moment for the new corporate plan. So if there are some suggestions around how it could be improved, we'll very happily look at that. I don't know, Mark, whether it is to bus stops or whether it's the linear route.
So we do the mapping based upon the bus stop, but I mean, one area where there is a slight weakness in the calculations is listing what's a planned future. So we have been looking at the way in which the master plan is done. If you look at the master plan, the whole of it, 52% of homes eventually, so 5 minutes walking to 5 minutes of bus stop. So there will be a high number, but that doesn't necessarily drive into what it's like on the ground now. Obviously, we do have the KPI set, and so that's what we're measuring for this year. I had a meeting with the team Friday to look at the way in which we can sustainable travel for the next and so we'll definitely take away that challenge for looking at the next period. But for these numbers, the 152 from a 5 minutes walk of a bus stop that's either there now or planning to be. Because we do generally know where the bus stop can be.
Not there now.
Not all of them, no.
How many of them? Sorry. Can we have coming back?
I have to go away and check which ones have been there, which ones haven't. So, for example, the homes at Ashmere will be based upon bus stops through Ashmere that are planned for the future. Obviously, the more buses going through Castle Hill and Keel, Springfield Park. You can get to bus connections within 5 minutes. There's a Harbour Village and Ebbsfleet Green, so it's probably actually is the one with and stops rather than existing.
It is for me an important question, because if this is meant to be a garden city and we're really pushing them down on car parking and car parking facilities on road to get them out of cars, we need to get them into buses. And they're not going to get them in buses if there are bus stops, and if there is a regular bus stop that is serviced by a bus that is economically viable. Now they're subsidised at the moment, and they're only become viable if they get enough passengers. So hence the question, if we're going to be genuinely trying to achieve what we're trying to achieve, we need to know where the bus stops are going to be and by when, and the number of buses.
Yeah, so certainly
it affects the planning conditions.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's something that we regularly talk about our committee. So in terms of, for example, actually in the capital I've identified, we know that fast track should be then running through the whole of Eastern, perhaps H Place roundabout at this time next year, and that's for Ashmere. So there is a sort of obviously a plan in place, but yeah, I appreciate that what these sort of rather sort of basic numbers don't dive into is exactly where we are on the ground now, and that point about bus frequency. But I think it's quite tricky to target or trying to sort of assess number of homes against bus frequency. We might have to take that up. Look at that. But obviously bus timetables change so regularly.
All right. Thank you for that, John. Look, I hope people have got some way towards answering your question. I think generally with our corporate plan and our KPIs, they should present challenge. We should be, with, sort of high quality performance achieving them. But, you make a very good point on this one. Can I bring Neil in, please, Neil?
Slightly a related point as it happens, but slightly less strategic. Under one of the greens on page 4 of 14, there's a reference to fast track, and Mark's just mentioned that, extended via Hedge Place roundabout by November 2025. But then I noticed subject to housing developers' progress on their Section 106 obligations. And I just wondered what that caveat is, who we're waiting for, what they've got to do, because, and just as an aside, on John's point, one of the things we could look at is some kind of PTAL, as they use in London, type analysis, which then enables you to look at accessibility in a slightly more rounded way. Although we're just looking at buses, we haven't got other means of public transport, but some kind of PTAL type analysis could help. But the question was really about what's the subject to?
I'm not sure if I can help with that. I think that Henry Cameron is working on the basis of getting that route through buses, pedestrian and cycle connections.
No, that is essentially, we meet bi-monthly with the developers and the KCC, and that day has come from those discussions. So we challenge the team on programme every time we meet, and that day has been cast into stone essentially with regards to the actual route through Eastern Quarry.
So I don't think you think actually subject to housing.
All right. Neil, is your question answered?
I think it is that it's not subject to housing completions and it's going to happen. So that's good.
All right. Good. Simon Blanchflower. Simon, can I bring you in, please?
A couple of questions from me. In terms of the KPI, the commitments, are any of the greens sort of tinged with amber at this stage, or are they all clear greens in terms of the trajectory to year end? And then the second question was the survey, community participation, resident satisfaction survey, I think closed at the end of this week, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Are we on target to get the number of survey responses that we need and have targeted to get in terms of that survey? So are we going to get the right sample size back from where we are today?
Yeah. I'll answer the first one first. The slightly flippant answer is that the ledger doesn't allow for tinges, but so some of them almost inevitably will be slightly more amber than bright red green, sort of bright green. But I don't think there's any there that we're particularly concerned about. So we place in that category. We tend to put them green in with pretty confident. Okay. In terms of the resident satisfaction survey, Kevin might be able to say more. We deliberately this time made it more online focused, so the response rate may well be lower as a result of that. But Kevin, do we know what the data is telling us at the moment from what's been?
Yeah, so the survey this year is only looking at the new neighbourhoods, not the new and existing neighbourhoods. So our target based on last year would have been 1,000 new neighbourhoods and 1,000 existing neighbourhoods. We raised our target this year to 1,200 people from the new neighbourhoods. At present, we're kind of not quite on target to reach that. As you said, there's been a bigger focus on trying to do it online, and that's been more difficult. I am hopeful that we'll get to 1,000 being the same as last year's, but it's yet to be seen that we can get to the 1,200, which was our rather ambitious target to raise the new neighbourhoods up by 20%. But in the last 2 weeks, Caroline has been doing a lot on social media, and our consultant team have been doing a lot of door-to-door knocking to get those numbers up on target.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. I think those are all questions from the board. Just 2 comments from myself. I'm very pleased to see that we have Lucy Wilkins from the Ministry of Housing Communities Local Government with us. Obviously, circling back to the spending review, particularly 25-26, and then the longer term multi-year settlement. But obviously, we're very hopeful that our submission for 25-26 will be come back to us and be confirmed appropriately. And I think when we just look at the red sort of corporate performance update there, that really is a good red because that's where we're doing further work on Northfleet Embankment East in terms of value for money, affordability burn, our overall programme, de-risking. There's been a lot of I think very positive, helpful challenge around that scheme. So on occasions you may not meet your overall objectives, but that's because you are doing things in a better way. And I think that's fair to say that's a situation where the additional work which is being undertaken there will hopefully result in a better outcome for the taxpayer and also for the scheme. So just wanted to quickly mention that. Any other comments on this paper? It is just for noting. All right, that is duly noted. Thank you very much, Ian. Thank you for that. That then brings us on to our next report, Caroline, Marketing and Communications. And welcome back from your honeymoon, Caroline.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Hugh. So apologies for my absence, but not that sorry because I was on my honeymoon. So I'll take the paper as read and I'll just walk you through the kind of overall general update. An action that I took away in my absence was around the Ebbsfleet Green Map, which is a fantastic asset that has been launched and you were provided with the marketing assets and video materials in the last board paper. A really good question and task that we took away was to monitor the performance of the website page and essentially our calls to action for people actually looking at the marketing assets and going on to visit the website. So our web developers are in the process of building analytics to report on the page performance of the Green Map page on the Ebbsfleet website. This means that we can therefore continue to report on the interest and activity. So we'll keep you updated on that as we continue to push this asset. Just for awareness, as we're entering the colder months, we're looking at ways to amplify the Green Map for the spring and looking at ways that we can target local interest groups to encourage people to start populating the natural assets on the map. Ebbsfleet Central Brand and Visioning, we're continuing our work with the Yard Creative. The board members should have received an invite within the new year to an online workshop with TYC. This will discuss the work to date, present some initial brand pillar concepts and flag the next exciting steps for you all so that board members are involved in that collaborative process. Given the interest and opportunity for what I hope will be really productive conversations, board members will be provided with further updates and information to give context for that workshop separately from this board meeting and ahead of the session in January. So on to socials. As we've just touched upon, most of our efforts during the reporting period have been to push and generate the responses for the resident satisfaction survey. It's been a really busy few months in terms of getting content out to residents. So we've tried to balance creatively we can engage with stakeholders, generate responses, whilst being mindful of consultation fatigue. I think that's certainly a challenge that we have had to balance quite delicately. But with the resident satisfaction survey, we've utilised paid advertising and tried to engage in two-way conversations with residents to ensure that they feel empowered to provide responses before the closing date. So I think that you'll be able to see through these efforts We've had an increase in reach across Facebook and Instagram, which is where we have done the paid advertising. This coupled with the good news stories that we've been able to promote this period, you can see that the community and our local stakeholders have been much more active across our socials, and we've very much taken a focus to be on hand to help support, answer questions and concerns from the community. Finally, on to press. We've had a really busy period for press, all good stuff, including press releases going out around the funding, contribution towards Ebbsfleet Academy in Cherry Orchard, the great news that works are beginning on the Ebbsfleet Green Community Buildings, the Alfredon Community Hub approval and the major urban park. These items are still being picked up by outlets beyond what's been included in the board annex. So we're still working hard, liaising with local news outlets to further promote that story. We're also in conversation with parties relating to the community building to explore a further good news event or photo op, as it's such an exciting project for us to be a part of. So I'll keep you updated on that. And come December, we are welcoming Construction News to Ebbsfleet, who are keen to write a feature piece on our work to date. So I'm conscious that we don't have a board meeting in December, but it's worth noting their visit in December. That's a whistle-stop tour of everything covered, the papers for note, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Caroline, thank you very much indeed. Board, any questions on this very thorough report? Yes,
Question
Valerie.
kind of chimes with one's earlier comment. It was fascinating to me too. Nearly 24,000 hits on the update for the fast track service, which does show again just how much it's needed and how vital it is. You know, you're dead right, John. We have big discussions around the planning committee with the development just at the last one, where there were many units without parking spaces. So it's clearly really valued, one that we should continue to promote and continue to deliver.
Yes, you make a very good point there, Valerie, about how important the more hits, the more relevant, the more important it is to residents. So any other comments, board? Nick?
It's not a particularly interesting comment, but talk me through. So LinkedIn seems to be doing really well. Possibly we're talking to ourselves. What do you think? And how are you balancing that sort of Instagram versus LinkedIn, Facebook? What's the overall strategy?
Really good question. Not boring at all. I think social media is really fast paced, and you have to be really mindful of the time that you allocate to different platforms. Each provides a different person kind of role. Facebook and Instagram is very much the way in which we engage with community members, and you can certainly see that with the type of content that we put out on those socials. LinkedIn has provided a really valuable platform in place of X, which, as we've discussed previously, has had a decline in A, the performance, and B, the ability to monitor your performance without paying. So we've utilised LinkedIn in a way that we previously utilised Twitter to engage with our professional industry stakeholders. So particularly around all of the good news stories, with planning in the major urban park, etc., we've been able to link in with other professionals who have supported the progress of that project and build and harness those relationships in a more authentic way than I think that Twitter ever offered us. So LinkedIn is incredibly valuable. To talk to ourselves in the context of sharing internal team successes, I think that's really important for LinkedIn, but also being able to engage with industry professionals and build those natural relationships.
And as architects and contractors like Graham, TW, announced their initiatives on LinkedIn, are we gathering all of that material and then reposting?
So
Do
yes.
we have a system that who's doing that? Are we doing that internally, or do we have an expert?
No, so socials are managed internally, and it's fairly natural process in that when you are tagged, you get a notification, you, depending on the content, can then engage either by interacting or reposting ourselves, which is typically what happens, as I said, with those good news stories. It's very much a collaborative process where we share each other's stories and demonstrate the power and benefit of collaboration. What we're unable to do, however, is analyse the performance of other people's content. So if we kind of comment or reshare other people's posts, that's great, it spreads awareness, but that doesn't come down and get reported in the environment.
You can't see how many people.
No.
All right, Nick, hopefully that helps. You know, I've certainly found LinkedIn to be extremely good for the Development Corporation in respect of reaching, you know, industry practitioners and, you know, sort of influencers in respect of, you know, the development space. So it's good to see we're using that. Any other comments, or we're just going to note this report? Ian, I think you might have wanted to come in.
Yeah, I was just going to add to the support on LinkedIn, really, and it's something that as officers we can engage with as well and promote the organisation through our posts. Some of us need quite a bit of help with that because we're not terribly social media savvy, but Caroline does help me, but other members of the team who've got strong followings, I don't know whether they count as influencers yet, but I think that's the benefit of it. I mean, Kevin, who's, you know, meeting, is very well connected with a wide range of professional groups and so on. So yeah, I think it's important for officers as well to engage with that in an appropriate way.
Yeah, it's a very good way of disseminating progress of the Development Corporation within, you know, a high quality group of industry practitioners. So good. On that basis, then I'm going to assume that this report is noted. Thank you very much, Caroline. And we're going to move on to the next one, Mark, Planning, Design and Delivery Report.
Yeah, thank you, Simon. So it's the usual update paper from me. So on the development sites, yeah, work continues on the Ebbsfleet section 106 and yeah, prep discussions on the next stage of the work. There's a design board meeting now planned for next month. Yeah, across Eastern Quarry, so we have the third phase of Ashmere submitted the last few weeks. So that's a key bit of what is taking place. And the section 73 application for EQ to amend the outline. I think I mentioned that in the last board meeting. I think it may have arrived that day. And based upon the pre-app, I think I informed the board we're expecting it to be 350 homes. It's actually 325 homes, but the application has been submitted on the basis of. Following on from our busting to the various questions today, road fast track plans have been submitted. So that isn't noted under the Norfolk Riverside, but I can update that next time. So this is a route that Bellway has to provide by doing amendments to the existing fast track. So the existing road to be able to then get fast track connection across Norfolk Riverside. So that's a good bit of progress there. Housing delivery update, so 538 completions. This is an up-to-date figure, so we did sort of chase everyone down, go out and look at all the sites. So I know sometimes I report that there's some data missing in certain locations, but that is an up-to-date figure. Planning committee have been very busy, so thanks to Neil, Valerie and Fred for meetings during October. Had a particularly busy meeting in October to get various applications over the line. Really good scheme, and Caroline had done some comms on the back of that. There was also the decision made regarding an approval for a sustainable sort of design assessment tool that Simon Harris has been working on. An update in 3.4 around the appointments to the committee, and the recruitment is underway for the new independent members, and James is dealing with the various inquiries that we're getting, but a few applications, so reasonable level of interest there. I think that's it for me. Thank you, Simon. Happy to take
Thank you, Mark. see a very healthy increase in completions. Have you got any view of where we'll be for year end on completions at the moment? Looks like there's confidence around exceeding our target of 620, but
yeah, we a bit of work, hopefully to feed into the Q3 reporting in January to see where the estimates were at the beginning of the year, to see which developers are overperforming, and obviously if any of them are then sort of slightly behind schedule. It does feel as though generally homes are coming forward earlier in the year rather than necessarily additional ones. So I wouldn't necessarily be thinking that we would be exceeding the 620 significantly at this stage, but I'll have a better idea on that when we do Q3 reporting in January.
all right. Thank you very much. Board, solid performance here. Any comments? Neil, I think you'd like to come in.
Just on the completions, very impressive figure. Well, I was going to say a month, but the time between board meetings. How much of that is because homes were actually completed, and how much is it because we went round and found out about them? So is the boost as great as it appears, or is it because we got better data?
So, I mean, we are reporting 145 within that period. I wouldn't necessarily say that that is totally alien to other numbers in other reporting periods, actually. So we did have to chase down some of the numbers and do a manual count. Obviously, there's a slight judgment when we do a manual count based upon what the developers might be telling us. But yeah, I don't think it's a case that there was an under reporting previously. Some of this is around apartment blocks completing times and then sort of chunking
because you get all the apartments in one go.
Yeah, and certainly that's the case at Ebbsfleet Green and one of the blocks of Cambridge.
Thank you.
All right. Simon Blanchflat. Simon, you'd like to come in, I know.
Yeah. Para 3.3 talks about the developer presentations in the pipe. Refers to the site owned by Shepherd Neame in Castle Hill.
Yes.
I thought that Shepherd Neame was sort of struggling to get a sort of viable proposition on that site from discussions we'd had previously. Does this now mean that they think they can bring that forward in a developable way, or are they changing the proposition?
They're looking at a slightly revised scheme. So yeah, so the previous planning permission from the site had a pub and then hotel space above.
Yes.
That permission expired. They're now looking at alternative options. They're obviously keen to be retaining the idea of mixed use because that's what the area master plan for the village identifies. Yeah, that might, for example, be a smaller level of space. You might be able to get some residential units, possibly at the upper floor. So yeah, it's definitely still a mixed use proposition. But yeah, this just really to work through the actual details with them on that. But it feels as though they are confident that they'll be able to have it.
Which would include public house.
And that's what we are pushing for, hoping for. We definitely know that the community are wanting that. We're very keen to be, as I say, sort of making sure that people comply with the master plan and uses like that on that.
Good.
All right. Thank you. Mark, yes, John.
Just interested on the education element of it. Obviously, it's good that we've got the new primary schools. That's all commendable. Question really, you're not mentioning secondary schools or SEN education. The reason I'm asking the question is I've just had a recent meeting with the education department in Kent, and they're saying the area is going to need additional secondary and certainly SEN education in the area. Have you picked that up from them and are making provision within what we're coming forward with?
So the most recent applications that obviously we have been consulting on with the around Ebbsfleet Central, and then we have had some initial discussions around the change to the application for Ebbsfleet Central. There is a request for development contribution to go to secondary provision. I guess what some of this on-site reporting doesn't capture month on month is the development contribution side. So, for example, the sites in Gratian, there was a request for contributions to go to its existing schools. whereas at Ebbsfleet Green Eastern Quarry, the provision is then met by the on-site delivery that we're seeing on the ground. So it's sort of been a combination up until now. We haven't heard that there's particular requirement over and above the need that's coming through the developments. It isn't as though they've been sort of reporting back around, sort of birth yields, meaning that the sort of the increased pressures coming through sort of population change. Generally, the requests coming through developments. On Eastern Quarry, certainly the initial view in the environmental statement of the developers, based upon conversations with KCC Education, they have identified that there may be a need to mitigate that element of the increase in the development through the SEN impact that may have. So obviously through that assessment work, they have identified SEN as being a particular pressure. At one point, we were having strategic conversations around the need for a school around Mills Kent for SEN. The last I heard is that KCC had found a location outside of by the Dartford or Gravesham for that. Actually, I thought there was possibly, yes, I identified it in Sedgwick's. I haven't heard anything more after that side projects.
I think that comes back to the key point is that they're after money everywhere, but that's another issue for another day. But it's the land they need is the key thing. So maybe worthwhile picking up with them on that, as to they want land for the schools, because that's you can provide money, but you can't provide land if we haven't got it.
So I'll check in with the pretty regularly.
Thank you, John. Valerie, apologies, I should have brought you in a little earlier.
No worries at all. This is a repeated issue on the top risk to delivery. We, pretty much constantly have maintaining design quality during implementation as a red. So I guess in part my question is that true? Because we are building an enormous war chest really of design codes, and we've just done a big piece of work on sustainability. We're looking at green infrastructure. There's strategies everywhere. I've never been involved in an organisation. I've seen so many conditions. Literally for almost every element. We just recently produced the balcony design. What more can we do? I just truly don't know. We get applications now, we release the reserve matters with tens and tens of conditions in relation to design quality.
Yeah, I think it is interesting because we talk about the risks before we produce these papers, and that's one that I'm quite keen to sort of interrogate the team in terms of what their view is, what they're sort of picking up really. And whenever we talk about this, I think that there is continuing to be a general the continuation of developers coming back and then asking for levels of change. So we are on the back of previous conversations committee, we are sort of piloting a slightly more I wouldn't say heavy-handed, but a slightly more involved approach, maybe in terms of one of the phases over Aberdeen, where there was almost a sign-off when you get to different build stages, and the design team, the planning officers, then go out and then check that. So I'm quite keen to see how that process goes, and then whether we can then roll that out to other phases. I think the view from the team is because there hasn't really been a let-up in terms of reconditioned discharges, non-material amendments, and therefore then there is a view that then there is a concern there. Arguably, if the officers and the LPA are approving the reconditioned discharge and approving the non-material, we are finding them acceptable. So we are being asked the question because there is a concern or there is a problem by the product development. Logically, if we are saying yes, is that then an erosion of quality? Because we're also accepting that. So I'll have a little bit more of a detailed chat, I think, when we do this.
So it might be Amber then.
It might be, and I think that sometimes there is sometimes these things are clouded by a particularly bad experience or one particular moment in time, and actually we do need to be looking at it.
Thank you.
I think it's also relevant though that we're emerging out of a period where there's been a bit of a downturn in the market, obviously much more broadly, and Ebbsfleet has felt that maybe it's not strongly as other places. But I think what that has led to greater pressure on the developers and their viabilities, and therefore they've been more inclined to come back into trying to see changes in materials, changes in various things in order to effectively reduce costs and get the viability back on track. I think what you've picked up is there's been an elevation in the number of those sorts of conversations we've got as a result.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much indeed. Are there any other questions on this? The report is just for noting. Yes, Nick.
Another minor point on the section 73 Eastern Quarry.
Yes.
Is the reduction in commercial request material?
That will be part of our consideration when we make a decision. I don't want to be. Obviously, it is in.
Okay, what I meant was how many square feet?
Oh, sorry, in terms of physically the size, sorry, in terms of materiality, that's a judgment call. I think it reduces it by 50, either 54,000 or 43,000 square metres. It's just a sizable reduction on the consented amounts.
Not only material, but huge.
Quite a lot.
Yes.
All right. Nick, hopefully that deals with that question. So I think this report is just for noting. Everyone has had their comments. It is duly noted. Mark, thank you very much for that. Simon, could we bring you in on your paper, please?
Next.
So green infrastructure. Simon, I noted from...
Should be Kevin.
Sorry, Simon, it should be Kevin's paper next. Ebbsfleet Living.
Oh, apologies. Kevin, can I bring you in on Ebbsfleet Living? My apologies.
No problem. Thank you, Simon. Apologies for not being there in person. I'll take the paper as being read and just pull out a couple of highlights from the paper this month. Firstly, on social value, you all should have a copy of the social value impact report on your desks, hopefully. Obviously, you've seen that before and it's been brought to board, but this is just the published version, which we thought would be useful. And also to highlight that the corporation was successful in being highly commended at the National Social Value Awards last month. That's particularly commendable as it's only our second year of reporting. We were in a shortlist of 8 and we were the only highly commended organisation, which effectively means we were runner-up. So that was quite a good reflection on our work to date. And the second thing just really to pull out is the series of welcome events that we held over the last 2 months. These were our tree giveaway welcome events. We held them in the 3 newest communities where we haven't had events previously. So one in Ashmere, one in Ebbsfleet Cross and one in Harbour Village. Exceptionally good turnouts, whole families coming together, choosing trees to bring home and plant together. So it's an initiative we ran a couple of years ago. It was very successful and it continues to be very popular amongst residents. And that's between 150 and 200 new trees now been planted in families' gardens in the Garden City. And we used a local nursery called Provender Nurseries, who straddle between Swanley and Dartford, to provide all of the trees and again to sort of teach people about how to grow in their gardens. So a very successful initiative. Obviously, there's a number of other things in the report and I'm happy to take any questions on those.
Thank you, Kevin. Very thorough report as always. Board, any comments, observations on this report? Kevin, you have wowed everyone with the quality of the work which is going on with our community here. So look, thank you very much for that. I think we are going to note that. Thank you. Simon, now it is your turn. Our green infrastructure strategy. And I think thanks to LinkedIn, I also saw that you'd been with the Development Corporation for 9 years. So happy 9-year anniversary. So please take us through the report.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, very special day on Monday. So thank you for remembering that. The paper is for information and covers the drafting of the green infrastructure strategy. Green infrastructure, as of course you would imagine, is a key part of the vision for a garden city. So we have been doing a lot of work already around green infrastructure. Indeed, we were fortunate to benefit from the planning policies of Dartford and Gravesham which led to over 40% of the land area within Ebbsfleet being master planned as open space. And since then, the implementation framework is built on that to connect those open spaces up into a grid of green spaces. And what the green infrastructure strategy does is pull all those different actions that we've been implementing over the last 9 years together into a document. It was very much something that Natural England were keen we developed and published. They wanted a kind of a public facing record of all the actions that we were delivering and our ambitions around green infrastructure. So this pulls together a lot of the work we're already doing, sets it out in a clear structure and a clear way forwards for the Garden City. For delivering the Garden City. So I think, you know, all the key information is in the paper. So I will open for questions.
Right, can I very quickly before I bring the board in, understand how we kind of promote this so people find this and are aware of this? Because my experience is that, you know, obviously there's fantastic work in here. The outputs are going to be fantastic for residents. How we make sure that people are aware of all of this? How are we doing that?
There's a sustainability section under the vision part of the EDC website. So that is the current home digitally of all of the sustainability work and strategies and documents. And then in terms of actually the promotion of it, we've got an ongoing comms plan for the sustainability programme that we work on every year with Caroline to kind of set out key messages, and we diarise that on a monthly basis with key messages and take into account the time of the year, etc., and the kind of messages that relate to the community as well. So this would kind of go into that forward comms plan for the environmental sustainability programme. That answer your question?
It does. It does. So we're going to give particular prominence to this strategy and signpost it for people to find it if they want to have a look at it. Is that right?
Yeah, well, I mean, we've already covered today. I mean, Kevin in his presentation just talked about, for example, the tree giveaway. Caroline talked about the green map. So a lot of the work we're doing, you know, the messages are going out and they're already a part of the comms we're doing, but we can link it back up to the green infrastructure strategy as part of that messaging now, with like a home for those activities.
Great, great. All right, can I bring in John?
Yeah, obviously, being a Garden City, having a good plan for the environment is a key thing to do. We have spoken about Springhead Bridge a number of occasions. I drive over it quite regularly, but I'm concerned that the River Fleet itself, which is one of the few chalk streams we've got in Kent, is pretty much choked up now with reeds. And if there used to be kingfishers there years ago, but if they're there now today, they must be getting size out to get through the reed beds. It's impossible for them. What are we doing? I suppose is the question. If we're saying a Garden City, what are we doing to keep it a Garden City and not just go back to wasteland, basically, which is what's happening with the River Fleet, our only chalk stream we got?
Yep. So one of the actual live projects this year in the environmental programme is the habitat management plans. So we've already actually started this summer surveying the first 2 villages in Ebbsfleet and developing a forward programme for looking after those habitats. Part of the River Ebbsfleet runs through the first of those villages, Springhead, and so we're looking to then publish the habitat management plan for Springhead, which will include a section of the river within that early next year. We can do some community engagement on that in the first instance, and then develop that. And that will also then go onto the green map that we mentioned earlier. So that will be a digital record of our current state of our green infrastructure, the tasks that you can undertake to improve those habitats, and then the aimed for quality of those habitats in the longer term. So that's the kind of digital place where our community will be able to reference it and understand what we're aiming for and how we can deliver that. And the idea is that habitat management plan programme will roll out village on village as they are completed. So we'll kind of progress that and develop that across the Garden City until we complete the whole city. It's a comprehensive habitat management plan for the whole city in due course.
Just sorry, coming back, going back to this idea, colleagues of mine love strategies. I'm not great one for strategies, to be honest. Plans, I like to see the action of it being done. This sounds like another strategy. of what we're going to do, how are we going to actually do it, and how is it going to be funded? Because it's nice to have a strategy and a plan, and you're consulting on it, we've agreed on it, we're all happy about it. If you do nothing with it, it's pointless. So what are we building into funding bids or anything else to make the strategy happen? To do it.
I'm smiling, John, because the team will know I don't like strategy either, and I'm always asking with the action plan to go alongside it. So, Simon, what's the plan for?
So the action plan is already in place. In reality, actually, this is a summary of the actions that we are already implementing. So the action plan was developed back in 2020, included actions around the 5 environmental areas. Natural environment was one of those areas, and there's an action plan associated with that. This was developed on the request of Natural England to summarise those actions into a strategy that we could then publish. So that's kind of, we've done it the other way around, because we've tried to avoid developing a strategy and actually been requested to develop something that summarises the work into a strategy document. So that's where we're at.
The environment action plan sign off.
You're still not answering his question.
Why is the river full of reeds then?
When are we going to get, who's going, presumably we're not responsible for removing the reeds from the chalk stream, or are we? And when can we do it? How much is it going to cost?
Can I just pop in? It might help a bit. So some quite large parts of the River Fleet are within Ebbsfleet Central's land ownership. So as part of Ebbsfleet Central West to look what we could bring forward there, we've been looking at how we can work to restore the river in that section. Likewise, for the bits of the river that we own near sort of the first phase of development, the Blue Lake proposals have looked at the work to the river in that section. And then, of course, through EC1, the master plan there shows an opening up of the river and that. So there are within all the projects that it sort of touches, which is numerous along the way. We are including and looking to work with the Environment Agency and Natural England to improve the river. But I think, as Simon's noting, there are other people, other third parties as well, whereby the strategy will hopefully help to frame what their management of that river could do to complement ours as part of those projects. If that helps.
Yeah, just Jen, I'm just wondering, are there situations where people have riparian obligations in respect to this river?
No, I don't think so, Simon, but let me take that away. But not that I am aware, but let us double check on all of that.
Along this length, there must be other landowners that will have responsibility. It won't just be us, will it?
No, it's not just.
And I think that's, so in the habitat management that Simon need to identify who the landowners are, who's responsible body. And it wouldn't always be us. In fact, I'm suspecting largely we clearly got some responsibilities in respect to the fleet where it passes to our ownership. But we're trying to do a comprehensive habitat management plans across the whole the neighbourhoods. There'll be lots of different landowners that the plan will need to identify.
And we're having to be careful that we, in understanding who owns the land, and whether there's any remaining obligations on the developers of that land to complete the original landscape that they were granted permission for, that we don't end up actually taking on that responsibility ourselves. So the habitat management plans are the right vehicle because they're the right scale to deal with the different constraints, issues around ownership, planning obligations, etc. So that's a good scale for us to work at, and we can roll it out, as I say, year on year to cover eventually the whole Garden City. So yeah, that's the approach we're taking.
All right, thank you for that. Simon Blanchflower, I think Simon, you wanted to come in, did you not?
Just quite a tactical and strategic. So on a tactical level, what sort of engagement do we have with organisations like Kent Wildlife Trust and other organisations that have good bodies of volunteers who are already mobilised in Kent and who will be engaged in this type of work? And the second question is, in redrafting or in drafting the new corporate plan, are there going to be clear linkages in the corporate plan with this strategy and other strategies to sit within the overall sustainability area of our business in terms of how that links into the next 5 years and what we're seeking to deliver in that period.
In terms of the first point around stakeholders, was some initial engagement across the stakeholders when we first started drafting. Indeed, the Kent Wildlife Trust actually were commissioned to develop the original biodiversity net gain, another strategy. I'm sorry, Valerie. Biodiversity net gain strategy back here, that was 2 years ago, 2022. So they completed that work, which is this is now based on biodiversity work. So there's also other groups in the area. There's Friends of the Swanscombe Peninsula, for example, who are particularly active, and we're keen that having now taken this to board and publish this, we then go out and engage with those groups again to kind of update them, work with them on implementing this. Indeed, the third objective in the strategy is implementation through engagement with the community and those stakeholders.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good point. We're getting to draft some of the text around to make sure that we weave in an appropriate way the
I think just to come back to John's point, certainly out where I live, we have an excellent group of volunteers called the Maidenhead Waterways Restoration Group, who are busy, clearing weed from restored, river areas and the like. And there must be a tremendous potential to try and, harness resident interaction in these sorts of things. And I'm just wondering whether there's more that we can do here to kind of, improve some of these habitats through encouraging volunteering and perhaps a little bit of pump priming money in order to help people get involved in this sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we'll take that away. That does feed in. It is one of the work streams within the Habitat Management Plan project that is currently live. We're looking to complete that by the end of this financial year, March 2025. So perhaps we'll wrap a report on the Habitat Management Plans into the annual report to update you on progress on that project using the green map. We're hoping to use the green map basically as an interface to set out to the community the kind of things they can get involved in and link that back to the responsible authorities, the people that own the land and manage the land, to allow that kind of dialogue between the community, the landowner, to agree on who's going to manage and undertake which tasks. What's that volunteering ambition? So yeah, that's certainly where we're working towards. It's complicated, as you can imagine, certainly at the Garden City scale, which is why we're breaking it down into village-sized chunks to make it easier to deliver.
All right, fantastic. Thank you very much for that, Simon. Board, any other comments, observations on this excellent paper? Valerie.
Not sure how helpful this is going to be. I like the strategy. Thank you very much. But I'm still struggling with the monitoring and reporting component myself. I mean, I can see that you're intending to report it through the Environmental Sustainability Programme, but I think we're missing a trick. This is why it might not be helpful. In that green infrastructure, obviously it delivers environmental benefits. You can measure some easily, there's tree planting, what have you. But actually, the real benefits are delivered right across the triple bottom line. I mean, they're not just around environmental sustainability, because an obvious would be, well, if you have wonderful green infrastructure within the Golden City, that is going to contribute towards healthy living. There will be outdoor creativity. So it's not just natural building natural habitats or how diversity of green trees or bees you're talking about in here. It's far, far wider. And I think somehow we need to try and capture the wider benefits too, because that is what makes it truly valuable and what makes it truly such a positive contributor towards our vision and objectives.
Okay, we'll take, yeah, okay, so in terms of understanding what full range benefits are.
Just reporting environmental sustainability to justice is really valuable, don't misunderstand, but actually the impact is so much wider.
Yeah, it's a really good point. The tool that we got to got those sorts of kind of benefits, I'd say outcomes framework was in place a while ago, which is intended to over longer periods of time, because those sorts of benefits and effect will be felt over longer periods of time. And that is our method of capturing those sort of longer term benefits. And remember, the outcomes framework is made up of significant amount of 40 odd metrics, health, well-being, economy, etc. And it's intended to measure not just in the immediate urban development area, but in the wider. But I think, whilst absolutely right, we would hope and expect those benefits to improve. They will be over a longer period of time, which is why put in place the outcomes framework. We're in the process of doing an update with that in order to help improve the plan process. But I do think some of those impacts you probably won't see any measurable some of those metrics over a much longer period. We definitely hope.
The metrics from the outcomes framework associated with the environment are incorporated into this document. So just record that. And it is an issue. You know, we had a conversation literally last week with the Old Oak Common Development Corporation around this very issue. So everybody's asking each other at the moment how they're monitoring and reporting on the different aspects of sustainability. The fact that that group has been brought together, we're working collaboratively to find a way forward, I think is helpful. So we'll continue to do that and feed that into the corporate planning of EDC as well over the next few months.
Because logically there'll be economic benefits too. The more beautiful the place is, the higher the land value. See what I mean? It's beautiful.
The original request from Natural England was that we did a natural capital accounts project. We looked at that and worked out that actually we weren't in a position to be able to do that, to calculate the value across socio-economic, environmental, until we'd done this work, setting out all of the different environmental projects and actions that we're already working on, and pulling all that together into a data set that we could then use for a natural capital approach. So this is a step towards that, but we weren't ready to do that at that point in time.
All right, thank you. I think we've had a good conversation on that. I don't believe there are any other comments on this paper, so this is just for noting. Simon, thank you for the excellent work. That means we're just moving on to finance, operations and programme report. Gerard.
Thank you, Chair. The report in front of you shows the position as at the half-year point, so as at the end of September. Section 2 and Annex A show our revenue expenditure. We are forecasting that we're going to spend 7.4 million this year, which is made up of 6 million allocation from the department and utilising 1.4 million seats. The details, as mentioned, shown at Annex A. Apologies, I will come on to explain why we've got so many other annexes this time around. On Section 3, on our capital, Table 1 does show what we're predicting to forecast to spend this year. So we are showing 17.3 million forecast capital expenditure for 24-25. We've got sort of three significant projects that are spending money this year. Ebbsfleet Central, the Ebbsfleet Green Community, which is shown under the civic heading. And we're also spending quite a lot of money on electricity investment for the Garden City, shown under the transport and utilities heading. We were anticipating spending more on electricity this year. So at 3.5, that does explain why we've reduced down to the 17.3 million. Most of that is due to rephasing of the electricity expenditure following discussions with UKPN, also sort of slippage with some other minor projects. But yeah, so we're going with a revised just over 17 million for this financial year. And then to explain why we've got so many annexes, unfortunately, we are bringing Section 8, the ARAC, our Audit Risk and Assurance Committee terms of reference. There are no proposed changes to the terms of reference for that committee. So we're just seeking board approval to note that they are unchanged. But some of the other documents, as the standing financial instructions, our procurement policy, risk management strategy, and our acceptable IT use policy, all have had some minor changes made to them. They've all been reviewed and endorsed by the last ARAC committee. So we're seeking now board approval to make those changes. Hopefully you've got versions that show those changes that have been sort of highlighted in your documents, so you can see where the minor changes have been made.
Gerard, thank you very much. Fred, I think you'd like to come in, wouldn't you?
Yes, thank you, Simon. And Gerard, it's the normal question I ask at this time of year when we've got a forecast out turn. Do you think that's where we're going to end up? It's a quintupling of spend?
I'm confident that, subject to the point at 3.2, which talks about our risk and contingency within the 17.3 million, I think we are, touching wood, keeping everything crossed, we're going to be around the £17 million capital mark and then around the 7.4 million of revenue for the year.
Good. Good. You know, it's clearly something that we'll keep an eye on, but it's a large amount of money to spend in a short amount of time.
It is. I'm sure others can comment on those three significant projects that we've got. Ebbsfleet Green Community is obviously underway on site delivering. Ebbsfleet Central is progressing. Obviously, we've got further discussions to have. Electricity, we are confident that the amount that we are forecasting will be paid to UKPN later or early in the next calendar year. So
buying transformers and the like, so heavy equipment and heavy plant accounts for that expenditure.
I think it's fair to say on the Ebbsfleet Green, at the point the report was written, no spend had materially occurred, but since then significant initial payments have been made. So yeah, I think we're well ahead of the position because of the timing of the papers already.
That's great. Great news. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for that. We have the, in certain cases, redrafted, marked up references, strategies, policies and the like. Are there any comments or more generally on the report from the board? On that basis, is everyone happy to approve the 5 new documents, or
Valerie wants to
document?
So that's a couple of things, really.
Yes, sorry, Valerie.
One was the use of debit cards. It isn't clear to me who might have access to a debit card, or indeed what sort of usage might be applied, because it's all very well to show the receipts, but well, you know, it could be an extremely expensive dinner. I just don't know. It seems a lot of money for me, and I wasn't sure how they were managed, as it were.
they are heavily restricted. There's 2 people in this room who currently have debit cards, and my assistant director of finance has a debit card. We use them for smaller purchases, predominantly things that we need to be done online that can't easily be done by an alternative source of payment. So we try and get everything done by invoice with a purchase order. We use the debit cards where basically for online transactions where there is no other.
No, that answers the question.
It's also given Valerie.
No, I'm not sure if every director had a debit. You know what I mean? This isn't clear. So that's really helpful. Thank you. And the next one is around. Well, it sort of links to single tender, and there can be a waiver on the authority of chief exec, as I've read in one of the papers, but in the procurement paper, it says there's no requirement for competitive procurement for purchase of up to £50,000. No, 50,000 for works. And that's a lot of money, because again, it's not clear if that can be with the same contractor several times over and all this sort of thing. And I just think 50,000 is a lot of money to just have a written letter and accept it. I don't know what colleagues feel. I mean,
I had that marked down as well.
Yeah.
Not having 3 quotes for 50,000 quid. It's unusual.
I think it
was approved at ARAC.
Yeah. Well, we had a discussion. I can't remember
we did
We
reference
did,
point about not, and I thought it was the smaller sum because 3 times not having 3 quotes for 50,000 quid. It seemed
we were content on the basis that we monitor this every ARAC, and there has to be an explanation of why they go for a single tender in each case. I think ARAC was content on that basis.
How do you demonstrate value for money then?
The way around it, almost have to argue why we're going down that route. Just exceptional circumstances. I suppose we'd be able to make a case for those circumstances being exceptional.
Well, the policy, I think we were suggesting this was almost was a change. And it's very rare to actually procure works at this sort of level, which is why we've not thought about it when we developed the procurement policy earlier in the year. So the thresholds we put in place for all other goods and services are much lower than the policy. It's clear.
Yeah, I can see.
There was some work that we had to have done to the Fleet Wall and what it's been really quite rare. So we thought it was appropriate to consider a threshold for works where, and it wouldn't be a single tender action, it would be you only need to obtain one quote. So in a similar way that our procurement policy allows us to do that for spend on goods and services, we tried to come up with a commensurate level threshold for that for works. It was, well, I believe it was discussed at ARAC and agreed, which is why we brought it to the board for sign off. So there wouldn't be a single tender action. It would just be our policy is below that level. You only need to get one quote. What's the European threshold?
5.3 million.
5.3 million. So changes each January, yeah. Which is where you have to do a full open process. Just to give you an idea, for goods and services, that threshold is 213,000. So.
Sorry, Valerie.
No, please do.
Following up on that, for works, purchase value up to £50,000, then procuring managers should retain appropriate written evidence to demonstrate value for money has been achieved. Just so that I understand it, what type of evidence would that be when you've gone for one written quote? How, and maybe the ARAC has discussed all this, and apologies if they have.
We have the same approach with the goods and services threshold as well, and that's a requirement. So, in fact, we've been putting in place some guidance to answer that very question, I guess.
So how do you do it?
So it is benchmarking from first. It might be that you make some phone calls to some other suppliers. It might be that we've purchased something similar very recently, which is a good indicator. Often goods and services, where we're buying consultancy services, for example, we've got framework rates that we refer to, so on. So we've got benchmarks that we can draw on. We would look for something similar with works. Where we had comparable rates, probably for large. As I say, it is quite rare that we procure works in this step. So we might use one of our cost consultants who we're using on schemes, other things. We'll make some phone calls and say, what are the current rates for this type of activity? So there are ways that we can do it, and we're in the process of setting it out. staff as to the type of evidence we declare it to be.
Ian, can I just check, what limits have we moved up from?
We didn't have a limit for work, Simon. Frankly, when we wrote and the board approved the current policy, which was only back in March, we hadn't thought about a different rate for work. So effectively, it was all covered by the 1,500 rate, which is the good and services, which you don't get a lot of works done for £1,500. So we thought, is it sensible to have a separate rate threshold for works? And we came up with that number to what we thought was a sensible number.
All right. But I'm mindful that this has been endorsed by ARAC. Fred, can I just understand, when are you going to review this, understand, the procurements which have been taken place under this delegation, just to, through ARAC, satisfy yourselves that, this is operating in an appropriate way?
Every ARAC, we receive a report on single tender actions, exceptions to the rules, extensions to contract, and these will form part of exactly the same thing. So if we see a pattern of lots of sort of £45,000, £40,000 procurements, we'll jump on that, and we're quite diligent in testing. It's a new procedure we put in place, probably about 9 months ago, I suspect, Ian and Gerard, and it's working pretty well. So I think the point we made to give the board some comfort is that seeing a lot of exceptions. So the starting position for us, as for any other public sector organisation, is value for money, and competition is the best way of both driving and demonstrating value for money, but it's not always appropriate. And I think we were of the view that 50,000 for works as against services is actually a relatively small number in the context of what we do as a development corporation. And I think we accepted that in the sorts of circumstances that Ian has just outlined, it may make sense for us to just get on with it with a supplier we know, where we can benchmark rates, rather than tie ourselves down into a complex procurement process. Now, that is only going to be true in a relatively small number of cases. So as ARAC, if we see it happening a lot, we will test it. And if it's happening too much, we'll make a recommendation that this number comes down. I don't expect management to abuse this limit. They have shown themselves to be responsible in other cases, and I would expect them to be responsible in this as well. So that was the thinking of ARAC. But as I say, just to give reassurance, we do actively monitor it at each ARAC meeting.
Thank you, Fred. So, board, is everyone comfortable with the suggested level which is being set at, which is subject to itself review and scrutiny by ARAC, and no doubt there would be modification if there were concerns in the way that it was operating?
I am. I'm satisfied. I think the number of works contracts under £50,000 is going to be extremely small anyway. It'll only really cover potentially any work we're having done to this building. I can't see there's going to be any other really works that we're likely to order that are under £50,000.
But that's why we never thought of it before, because it's so rare. So, yeah.
Can I ask that we have a report back on how many works do come under that level and have been reported to ARAC in, say, 6 months' time, so that we have an idea, because we're all proceeding on that basis. That shouldn't be a difficult report.
That's fine from my perspective. I'm either happy to report myself as ARAC chair, or just for have Gerard to report to this meeting in 6 months' time as to how many of these there've been.
Yeah, I think, Gerard, if you just capture this in your report on a semi-annual basis, I think that will give some comfort to the board here.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great. I think we've had a good debate around that. So we're noting the finance updates, but also we are approving the 5 policies and terms of reference, etc., etc. Is everyone comfortable with that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you for raising that point, Valerie.
Jeremy's got a thumb up. I thought it's a thumb up. Thank you, Jeremy.
Yeah, Jeremy, yeah, I saw Jeremy's thumb there. Good. So let's move on to the next paper then. That is Paul and Jen and Paul, Development Infrastructure Enabling Works.
Yeah, thanks everybody. So just a couple of key bits to draw out from the development section. Most notably that the stage 2 design for the infrastructure works on the Ebbsfleet Central phase 1 project completed on time at the end of September. And that we are currently out of public consultation on the area master plan and design code. We held a number of consultation events and exhibitions last week, but the online Commonplace website stays open until the middle of December for further comments. But otherwise at 3.3, you'll note the focus for that project recently has been the outline business case, which is being discussed in part 2. Otherwise, the main thing just to note, and it's been mentioned under a couple of people's papers today, is at section 6, the Ebbsfleet Green Community Buildings that are now on site. I'm pleased to report with lots of activity happening down there. And just a bit of an update provided on those, and notably really that the facilities are expected to open to the public by the latest of spring 2026, potentially a bit in advance of that. That's the backstop date. So we'll be able to keep the board up to date on that sort of progress. Oh.
Good afternoon, everybody. Just a few key updates from the infrastructure and enabling works directorate. So first of all, Springhead Bridge, item 7, very close to completing procurement for the road repairs and the principal protection items to Springhead Bridge. Looking to appoint that contract very, very soon. The works will be undertaken during the February half term. That's in line with NCC highways requirements. We don't want any work at any time during sensitive holiday periods, but that half term in February has been selected and subject to the TTR approval with their highways department. So looking to place that one very, very soon. Just on the fast track network, excuse me. On Sunday, the 10th of November, the new contract kicked in with Go Ahead. So this is a 15-year contract. ACC are close to Go Ahead, the provision of the fast track services. It all went ahead as planned. The exciting news is that over the course of the next few months, up to spring 2025, they are introducing 28 state-of-the-art electric buses that look very much like trams. So that's something very exciting to look forward to. The fleet at the moment is actually operating on some diesel buses, but the charging infrastructure is being installed over the next few months to facilitate the actual operation of those electric buses. And alongside that, they've introduced a new app and the new timetables that have been circulated to the public. Just a quick update on Fast Track B Tunnel. We've been keeping very close to KCC over the last reporting period. They have commenced their procurement process for their contractor. They had, as we understand, 6 responses to their selection questionnaire, and they were in the process of assessing those SQs with a view to instructing the invitation to tender mid-December. Unfortunately, planning has slipped back 1 month, but they're hoping they get plenty determination in December. So obviously we're keeping very, very close to that with regular meetings with KCC. Just in line with that, we've had several key legal meetings, and we've agreed that rather than having 2 separate legal agreements, an overarching and a funding agreement, we're going to have one combined agreement. That's been agreed with KCC and their legal parties, and we're in the process of just producing the first draft of that combined document, which we will be reviewing before it then gets forwarded on to KCC. They're the key updates. Happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. Looking forward to seeing those new buses, trams. They sound fantastic. Board, any comments, questions, observations on this paper?
Valerie has a comment.
Yes, a comment.
Yes, Valerie.
Thank you. I just want to tell colleagues that the board of Ebbsfleet Garden City Trust went to see the sites under construction for Neighbourhood House and the Community Hub. It was such a brilliant site visit, actually, to see the diggers in the ground and to see these projects actually come to fruition. It's great.
Fantastic. That's good to know, Valerie. Thank you. All right, everyone. I think we are going to note this report. Nick, did I see your hand there?
Yes, sorry.
Eagle-eyed of me, that one.
Under 9.2, how big a risk is now being mitigated? I mean, financially, they had said no to 33 kV.
It's a huge risk, both in time and in terms of cost. We are awaiting that agreement in writing, but we are proceeding after that agreement here. But yeah, it's a significant mitigation.
If the Network Rail turn around and do their last minute usual, realises some value, what's the alternative?
The alternative is a much longer route. And clearly we will push back on that from the agreement that UKN have reached with the Network Rail. So I think we're in a strong position, and we would take that as a starting point and push back.
All right. Thank you, Nick. Hopefully that answers your question. So, on that basis, I think that report is duly noted. Thank you, Jen and Paul. We received a small number of questions from members of the public, as we do for each board meeting, and responses will be going onto our website. So that then concludes the part one part of our meeting here. We will now go into part two for confidential papers, but I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today. As we approach Christmas, have a wonderful Christmas, and we look forward to seeing you from a board perspective again in January. But thank you very much indeed for joining us here at Ebbsfleet Development Corporation.